All right, so this is the beginning of our Q&A stream here for my YouTube channel, Timmy RC. So, what we're going to do is to start off, I have some questions that were asked on my announcement video for this live stream. So, I'm going to go through those first. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat and I will get to those after I get to the questions from the video I posted a few days ago. All right. So, first question, frame geometry, true X versus squashed X, and why? All right. So, there's pros and cons to true X and squashed X. For me personally, I prefer true X, and I specifically prefer a true X frame that has spacing between all of the props. So I'll just go ahead and get my quad. So this is my quad. This is a true X. So all the motors are the same distance apart. And I like to have my true X frames to have a gap between all of the props. So you could think of it as this gives all of the propellers room to breathe. And that kind of just reduces the amount of turbulence that comes off of one prop and how it interferes with the other prop. So basically all the props are getting cleaner air, and that, in my experience, just makes the quad fly better. A common problem I've had and seen with the Squash X quads, which I'll go get my alien and show you. So Squash X, right? The props front to back are really close to each other and they're more spaced out side to side. So the problem I found with these is when you're flying fours, just cruising, the turbulence from the front props interferes with the air reaching the rear props, and you can get just kind of like jitters and oscillations because of that. So that's a problem I found with this. In addition, because the props are so close to each other, front to back, the pitch authority is generally worse. So I don't like that about Squash X either. So basically, in my opinion, I like the True X. And then some people like the Stretch X, which is like if you took an alien and turned it sideways so that this would be the front and this would be the back. And that still gives you the spacing between the front and rear props. But I like to have spacing between all the props because I only fly freestyle. So if I'm doing any sideways moves or anything like that, we're not going to have turbulence interfering with the left and right motors going from left to right. So basically just clean air for all the props. Now, the one disadvantage of the True X compared to the Squash X is that the motors are further forward on the True X. So you're a lot more likely to get your propellers and or motors in the view of your camera. So, if you're doing a lot of filming and you really care about your footage, you don't want props in your footage, then you might want to go with the Squash X. All right. Next one is a bit of a long one. Have you tried Emu Flight, and do you still feel like it doesn't bring anything on its own and unique to the table? Do you still feel it will die out? I totally respect your opinion and your basis on your opinion. I also would really hope after you give it a shot, maybe sway your thinking, as it is really unique and brings a lot of its own flight characteristics to the table and is pushing new features that are really cool and useful in a lot of ways. All right. So basically, this is asking, have I tried Emu Flight? The answer to that is no. I'm still waiting for their first official release to come out. I think they're on 0.3 now. But I want to make sure that I'm trying like their finished product first. I don't want to try like a kind of pre-production firmware when it's not really quite finished and polished yet. So I'm waiting for that. Um, Now, I think this guy is kind of addressing the video I made, which was Butterflight is dead, Emu Flight is next, which was a Tim talk, which that's a pretty opinionated video. So I was basically saying that I think Emu Flight's going to die. And I'm not saying that Emu Flight is bad. And I actually really like how they are trying to come out with new features that are different from what we've seen before. But I still think there are a lot of hurdles for them just because they need to gain popularity. But the features that they're coming out with do seem rather clever. So the newest feature they've come out with is like dynamic rates. So basically, it's as I understand it, it is a improvement of feed forward essentially, but there's six values to tune. Because there's three at like center stick and three at close to full stick. And that's on top of your 3 values for your rates. So now you have 9 rate values to tune. So they're definitely coming out with some interesting features. And that does mean they're bringing things unique to the table. So yes. But as far as it dying out, like I said, the main problem I foresee is just gaining popularity, because the thing is, like Beta Flight, Race Flight, Kiss, all the current popular firmwares, they all fly so good already that your average Joe is going to have to be able to basically discern the difference between Emu Flight and like Beta Flight and be able to see that it's better. And the other problem is that I feel like the majority of people don't even bother tuning their PIDs anymore. And now we're adding in even more values to tune on top of the already, I think, too many values to tune in Beta Flight. But, I'm just speculating. I haven't tried the firmware. So once the first official release of the firmware comes out, I will try it and then give my actual opinion on Emu Flight. But for now, they're definitely coming out with some interesting features. So I'm definitely excited to see what more they're going to come out with and to actually try it out once the software is officially released. All right. Next one. When you do your builds, is there certain hardware you like to use, and how much do you target a certain weight? So this is like a multi-part question. I'm just going to answer the first part of this first. So is there certain hardware I like to use? I'm assuming you mean electronics, and yes, we'll get to that because someone else asked that question. How much do you target a certain weight? I'm not really targeting a certain weight, but I'm definitely targeting as light as possible. So like the tubular quad frame came in at just under 100 grams. I was really happy about that. I recently swapped the motors to lighter motors and saved me a few grams that way. So always looking for new ways to save weight. I don't really have a number I'm going for though. How much do you rely on soft mounting, whether it be flight controllers or the motors or both? I am a big advocate of soft mounting, because in my mind, soft mounting is like free filtering, because when you do software filtering, you induce delay. When you do hardware filtering, which is just soft mounting your motors, soft mounting your flight controller, that is basically no delay, and there's not as much penalty as there is when you do it through software. So I say really soft mount as much as you can. And I think Joshua Barbell made a video like showing that soft mounting your motors and does make a big difference in how much gyro noise there is. So I would soft mount everything. Do you stick with a certain prop or change them around for certain conditions? I usually stick with whatever my favorite prop is at the moment, just to keep it consistent so I always know how the quad's going to respond. Do you mount your receiver antennas any special way for a better radio link, kind of. So I'll just show you how they're mounted. They're mounted like this. Well, really, they should be I try to get them at like 90 degrees apart. But they are kind of flat, and when you're flying, that's not really good. You want them to probably be vertical and then have your transmitter antenna vertical. So, I mean, I just try to get them 90 degrees apart, and then I have my video antenna away from my receiver antennas, but other than that, I don't really do anything else. I think there's probably much better ways to mount the antennas, but this works fine for me. I don't go too far because my goggle receiver isn't that good. So I lose video before I lose my RC link. All right, next one is, are there any tips you have for less noisy video and better picture? When I first started flying, I had a lot of like video noise, and I actually built my own filters for the power supply to my video transmitter. Nowadays, I just use like the TBS Unify Pro, and I don't have any problems with video noise. So using a quality video transmitter is an easy way to avoid noise. But just making sure your power supply is clean is definitely important. Do you have your gimbals set up a certain way? Yes. I have them. I run a DX8. It's a really old transmitter now. I have the sticks a little bit longer than how they came, and I have them pretty loose. Most pilots I know of like their sticks a lot looser than stock, because when there's too much resistance, it just doesn't feel natural. You just need enough resistance so you know where the stick is, essentially. But any more than that, it just kind of makes it feel awkward, in my opinion. And then pinching over thumbs. I'm a thumber. A lot of like 3D pilots, not like quad 3D, like fixed wing 3D, like extras and edges and whatever, and 3D helis with one rotor, not four. They use pinching because it's a lot more accurate. Hybrid pinching is something that I want to say Mr. Steele came up with, and it's like in between. But I'm a thumber. Can you give any tips on how to keep a simple and easily maintainable setup? I would just make sure you're using quality components, because that's going to be the simplest, because you're not going to have to replace them all the time generally if they're high quality components. And then as far as keeping things simple, I really have become a big fan of the stacks, because with two boards, you have your ESCs and then your flight controller and OSD all in one. You just wire it all up to the stack, you're done. And on like my Alien, I have 4 ESCs, a flight controller, a video transmitter, and then I also have a separate voltage regulator, a separate OSD. So there's like 8 different boards in this thing, plus a receiver, so 9. And it's a rat's nest of wire in this thing. So that's what we had before stacks. So I would go with a stack, and I would go with a quality stack. And I also would avoid a single board that is both a flight controller and the 4-in-1 ESC all in one, because there's just too much electrical noise going on in there, all crammed into a tight space, and that can mess with like gyro stuff and whatever. So I did actually buy a relatively cheap all-in-one that had all 4 ESCs and the flight controller and an OSD all in a single board, and I could not tune the thing in one of the axes because either the gyro was faulty or the board was not well designed, and there was electrical noise getting into one of the gyro axes. So I just constantly had a little bit of a wobble, and I eventually had to return the board because it wasn't the quad's problem. It was just the board was not good. Okay, so all those questions were one comment. And then next comment is, do you feel that build hardware and weight and associated things don't have as much to do with it anymore with how advanced and good the flight controller software is now? Okay, so basically, can flight controller software like compensate for a heavy setup or not as good electronics? It can compensate for like lower quality electronics to a certain point, and I feel like that's what a lot of features in Betaflight specifically are to address, such as anti-gravity, because that's uh, anti-gravity is to address like one corner of the quad dipping when you give it throttle. And that is a very common issue with lower quality ESCs. So they can be rated for like a high amperage, but if they're not designed and built well, you'll have the quad dip a little bit every time you're on throttle. And like that's what that feature is to address. So it can kind of correct for those kinds of things and make the quad fly better, but only to a certain point. Like the quad is always going to fly better if you have good hardware on it. And there's definitely nothing in software that can compensate for extra weight. So you just can't get around the physics of that. And you really should be trying to shave as much weight as possible if you're looking for a high performance quad. But there's also the trade-off of durability there as well. So shave weight where you can, and I would use high quality electronics. Even if the software is a lot better than it was. All right. Next comment is 5 or 6 inch for freestyle / long range, and why is 2 blades 6 inch props are same as good / grip / efficient as 5 inch tri blades, and then my current setup and why. So this is 3 parts. All right. First up, well, I'm going to do the first two, which is 5 inch or 6 inch and twin blades versus tri blades. So as you may know, I'm a big fan of 6 inch. So originally I started out on 5 inch props on a Vortex, the original Vortex, and that was fine. And I tried 6 inch props for like a couple flights, and I only had one set, and then I broke them. But I did like how that flew. And then I didn't try 6 inch again until years later. So before that, I built the 5 inch Alien, and then I built the 6 inch Alien dubbed the Butter Quad. And that I think is a really good comparison because it's like a pretty fair comparison. Same frames, same electronics, except the motors and props. And I by far preferred the 6 inch just because of the speed, the like real easy thrust, and the grip. So as you may know, the most popular props for 5 inch quads are tri blades. And this never made a lot of sense to me because it is a known fact that generally tri blades are less efficient than bi blades, just because there's less space or distance between the blades. So the turbulence coming off one blade interferes more with the next blade on tri blades compared to bi blades. So they're less efficient consequently. So that never made sense to me why we're running tri blades on 5 inch when we could easily get more efficiency by going up a prop size. The other thing is bigger props are also generally more efficient than smaller props, even if they have the same number of blades. So generally, if you want to get more efficiency, you just go up in prop size. So going back to the 5 or 6 inch for freestyle / long range, 6 inch all the way for freestyle. If you have a long range quad, I would maybe even go 7 inch or 8 inch, just because it's going to be more efficient because the props are bigger, and always buy blades, I think. The advantage of tri-blades is that they make the quad feel a lot more controllable, and I think that's also has to do with because they don't put on speed as well as twin blades. So in my experience, a 6-inch bi-blade is faster than a 5-inch tri-blade. And then a 6-inch tri-blade also doesn't make any sense to me because it's just way too much grip for what I do, and it's too slow. So I think I answered those two. And then my current setup and why. So I said I would get back to this. I actually made a whole video on this, so you can watch that, but I'll give a brief rundown here. So we're running the Ethics K2 blades, which are made by HQ. They're a 6x4. I believe it's a 4. So 6-inch bi-blade props. I used to run the Emax Avant long range props before these, and those were pretty good as well. I run 2206 1922 kV hyperlight motors. Did I say 2206? 2206 and a half. 1922 kV hyperlight motors. So I used to run 2207 and a halves, and I didn't really feel like I needed all of that torque, and it was just penalizing me in weight. So I dropped down the stator size. Quad feels almost the same, but I saved some weight. So it really doesn't make sense to me when people are running like these ginormous like 2208 motors on 5-inch, because even on a 6-inch blade where you need more torque to spin it, I'd say 2206 is plenty. So I would say 2205 on 5-inch in my opinion. I'm running the Hobby Wing Gen 3 stack. I've run all 3 generations of this stack now. I've mostly had success with them. So they're reliable. There's no quad dipping or anything like that with the ESCs. No weird gyro things like that cheap board that I tried. The camera is a Foxier. I want to say it's an Aero version 3. It's just a micro cam to save weight. There's nothing really special about it. I'm running a Lemon RX diversity satellite receiver. I really like the Lemon RX receivers. I had an incident with a Spectrum brand 4-channel receiver. It was like their budget receiver, and I lost 2 airplanes to that receiver. I will never, ever again buy a Spectrum receiver. These Lemon RX receivers are pretty good, though. The video transmitter is a TBS Unify Pro, and then I have the TBS like mini Dum Dum Triumph with a UFL, so it goes right onto the transmitter to save weight. And I think that's all the electronics. Some random bits and bobs. I have custom 3D printed FPV camera mount, and then a custom design GoPro mount that I designed and printed. And so the dry weight of this quad, let me look it up. So the dry weight of this quad was 330 grams as you see it right now. So with no battery, no GoPro, 330 grams. All right, and then this is the last comment I got on my announcement video for this stream. So as a beginner, should I pull the trigger for the DJI FPV system, or should I just start with basic analog equipment? What would you do? So I'm going to focus on the what would you do. So disclaimer, I've not tried the DJI digital FPV system. It does look really good, but it also is really expensive. And digital FPV systems are relatively new. I mean, they've been trying to make them for years now, but they're still, much newer than the analog stuff. So what I would do, if you're a beginner, I would just go with an analog system because it's going to work. It may not have as many pixels as the digital system, but the link will be pretty good. and you'll be able to fly with it just fine. I fly with Attitude V3s without even a fancy module. I still use those because I'm too cheap to buy like a um, Dominator pair of goggles, the fancy ones. Now they have OLED. So I'm kind of traditional in that sense. So I personally would just stick with analog. And really what it comes down to is that digital FPV is not going to make you fly better. Maybe you'll avoid a few crashes because you won't hit some scraggle, but generally paying absurd amounts of money for really high-end stuff, it's not going to make you a better pilot. So to me, it's not worth it. All right, so that's it for the comments. I'm going to scroll up in the chat here. We're going to start talking to the chat. Have you tried the 4.2? I have no idea. I don't know. I know I'm on beta flight 4 point something. This is one of the reasons why I haven't tried Emu Flight, is because my quad flies, I have it so dialed in. I don't want to upgrade the software all the time because it's not going to feel any different. And it's just a pain in my butt because I have to make sure all the settings are the same. So I don't think I've tried 4.2 yet. I'm at least on 4.0. Hi, Timmy RC. What has been the most difficult aspect about building your own quad? And what advice would you give to pilots who wish to design and build their own quad? Okay. I would say just the designing part of it is kind of difficult because you have to think about all these things at once. So even before like building the first one, I went through a couple iterations just in CAD to figure out what I wanted. And then I'm still making iterations after iterations because we're on version 4 already. As far as building it physically, it's just a little bit hard to get the precision. So you just have to take your time. I take some extra steps to make sure that I'm going to hit all the dimensions as well as I can by using hand tools because I don't have a CNC machine. And then the second part of that question was, and what advice would you give to pilots who wish to design and build their own quad? I would say my biggest advice if you want to design and build your own quad is just go do it. Because a lot of people, I feel like they have the potential to, do a lot of great things, make some cool designs, make it happen, but they just feel like they're not smart enough to, or something dumb like that. So, if you want to do a project, just do it. Like the worst thing that is going to happen is it's going to suck, and you'll at least have learned something and you can go back and make it better. So even if you think I'm good at designing things, like keep in mind, I'm on the 4th version of this thing because this thing has broken that many times. So there's not really anything special that I'm doing here. It's just, I do it. So just go and do it. That's it. Be More Visual says, I have to let you know your tutorials are amazing. You are top tier. Thank you. I try to put a lot of work into those and make them as understandable as I can. Kevin Fuller says, will the video and radio antenna cause interference with each other? They can, even though they're on different frequencies. If they're just right next to each other, they can kind of blow each other out. So that's why I have them spaced apart. Oh, Cinefly tried to respond to that. They should not because they're on different frequencies. Yes, that's true. But when you have like 800 milliwatts of power right next to your receiver antennas, it can cause issues, and people have had issues from that. So as long as you have, a few inches of space between them, you won't run into issues because they are on different frequencies. Dino Drones, FPV, digging your channel and knowledge, especially the PidTune series. Big ups from San Bernardino Drones. Thank you. Thumbs up DX8. Yes, OG DX8. Have you tried the T-Motor T6143? I can't find a prop that doesn't jello for 6-inch. Let me look up that prop real quick. No, I have not tried this because it's a tri-blade, and I don't like tri-blades on 6-inch. Can't find a prop that doesn't jello. If you're having jello on 6-inch, it probably isn't your props, as long as you're running like a modern prop that's balanced. I will say a big problem with 6-inch is that the arms on the frame are longer. And that means that your quad is going to naturally want to vibrate at a lower frequency. And the props themselves are spinning slower. So everything is lower frequency on a bigger quad. And the lower frequencies can mess with your gyro a lot more easily, because what the software does is it just cuts out all the high frequencies, and it only cares about the low frequencies, because the really low frequencies correspond to the actual movements of the quad, which the flight controller is trying to correct for. So basically, if your frame isn't really stiff, you can run into jello problems. Also, there's a ton of other things, like if you have a motor that's been bashed, that's going to cause issues. Soft mount everything, easy. I made 2 videos that were top 5 reasons your quad has jello, and one was for the tuning side of things and one was for the hardware side of things. So go watch those and make sure you're doing, or you try out everything in those as well. Because it may be something simple like just soft mount your motors. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe your props aren't fresh. Maybe they're unbalanced. I don't know. Hey Timmy, would you consider making quads that can float on water? I probably won't. That's just not something that has interested me. But if I'm filming over water, I might, I don't know, strap a float to my quad or something if I'm trying to get that kind of footage, because I do not want to go swimming for a quad or diving for a quad. But for something that could like take off and land on water, probably not. Are you running lower kV and higher voltage for the 6-inch setup? Is there different things you should be paying attention for when trying to tune a 6-inch setup over a 5-inch? Okay, so first part of the question, am I running lower kV and higher voltage on 6-inch? I just run 4S. I've looked at some data from Mini Quad Test Bench, and I found that between 4S and 6S, the efficiency difference is minimal, and it looks like the only benefit I'm finding to 6S would be more power. I'm going to have a full video on that later because I think this is an interesting subject. But for what I'm doing, I don't want more power, and I'm really looking for efficiency, but the efficiency is the same pretty much for this application. So 4S. And the other reason I'm not running 6S is because I like the really low kV, even on 4S. So 1922 kV. Usually on 6-inch, people run like 2200 kV around there. And I used to run that, but I keep dropping it to get better throttle control. So right now we're at 1922 kV. And if I went to like 5S or 6S, they don't make motors with low enough kV to give me the throttle range I want. So unfortunately, it looks like I won't be able to try 6S the way that I want to anytime soon, unless someone comes out with like an 1000 kV motor. The lowest I've seen is like 1750, which is for 6S 5-inch. But let me know if you know any lower kV motors built for mini quads. And then the second part of that question is, are there different things you should be paying attention to when flying to tune a 6-inch compared to a 5-inch? Not really. 6 inches is usually more prone to jello, so that's just annoying. But with my frame, I have yet to have any issues with Jello because the arms are so stiff. Don't generally, the only difference is that 6-inch likes a lot more eye. That's about it. But I'm not looking for anything different. Tried Pyro Drone 4-in-1 ESCs. No. Okay. Hey man, just wondering if you or anyone else are getting unsynced startup tones. I get it on 2 quads, both fly fine. Today, out of nowhere, RPM filter warning. No, I don't. I haven't had that issue, so unfortunately, I cannot help you with that. David says, really enjoyed your tuning video. Love the feeling after using just P, I, and D. I am running 0 feed forward 2. I'm wanting my quad to feel a little more snappy though. Can I tune that a bit to help? Well, first, I'm glad you enjoyed the video. I put a lot of work into that. And as far as dialing in more feed forward, yes, if you want the quad to feel more snappy than just a properly tuned P value makes it, then yes, you can add in more feed forward. I personally like the duller feeling of no feed forward because to me, it's easier to control the quad that way. I actually had feed forward on the default settings at one point, and I could not hit gaps very well because it was like overly twitchy, and that was just on the default values. So I just turned it off, and I could hit gaps all of a sudden. Someone says you're going to love the 4.2. All right. Okay, there's a lot of conversation going on here. Looking for the questions. Yo, with 3 O's. Was just wondering, what is the cheapest, best mini drone for speed? I don't fly any like mini drones smaller than 5 or 6 inch, so I can't really tell you. But I always do recommend to build your own quads because they're gonna do exactly what you want them to do, what you built them for. So I'm not saying you have to design your own frame like I did, but at least like picking out the electronics and stuff like that, you'll generally be happier than if you just buy something, in my experience. But that isn't to say there aren't any good pre-built drones on the market. There are plenty now, and they're a lot better than they used to be. So, but that's just my opinion. I would look into building your own quad. You should start a Velocidrone freestyle group. You can view and teach group of 5. I do have Velocidrone. I could do. I don't know if I would do like kind of the one-on-one or like or teaching like a group of people, but I could definitely do maybe tutorials with Velocidrone. But at that point, I would probably do just straight up videos. But yeah, that's an interesting idea. I'll think about that. Are you running 8K 8K? No, I'm running 1K, I think. Not that they all feel the same. I've tried 8K, 4K, 1K. They're all the same, but I chose 1K just because that's what Kiss used to use, and I thought it'd be fun to try, and I haven't changed it back since. Someone said you can throttle cut now. At Betaflight, it makes it easy to mix high KV and high cell count. Yeah, I know there's ways to limit the throttle, but it just always, I just don't like doing things in software. I like the hardware to be set up as optimally as possible. So to me, it just doesn't make too much sense if I like on this quad, if I just bought a 2600 kV motor and then instead of buying a low kV motor, and then throttle cut it. Like a lot of people, I think, do that because there's this misinformation out there that high kV has better torque, which is not true. I made a video about that. But yeah, if I really wanted to try 6S, I probably would have to use a throttle cut just because there isn't the kV I want available. The one issue with doing that is your idle speed is going to be higher. So even if your idle setting in Betaflight is the same as it would be on low kV, the actual speed of the motor is going to be higher because the kV is higher. And then if you actually want the actual motor idle speed to be lower, and you drop that idle percentage in the flight controller software, at those really low RPMs, you are actually losing torque on the high kV motor just because it's not wired to run at that low of a speed with like high torque. So that's like the one drawback of using that throttle cut, is that if you mess with the idle percentage and you lower it a bunch, you're gonna have less response at zero throttle than you would with a low kV motor. So that's another reason why that doesn't make too much sense to me. Hey, my motors are getting hot when I push a lot. Should I change tune a little bit or leave it like that? If your motors are so hot that you can't touch them and just leave your fingers there, you need to change something. So a lot of times it has to do with the D value being too high, or the filtering for really anything being, there not being enough filtering. Because what happens is then your ESC is going to be sending signals to the motor to like be here and then there and then here and then there, like over and over. And that causes the motors to get hot. So it could be bad PIDs. It could be bad filtering. It could be you have a lot of vibration in the quad that's causing the PID loop to tell the quad to do a ton of different things all at the same time. But there's like Joshua Barbell has a bunch of videos on that, and then like Betaflight has documentation on that as well. I'm not an expert at that really because I've never really had problems with hot motors. .2 feed forward has been fixed. I hated the new feed forward, but I love the new feed forward. Okay, that's good. I did see that they added something to prevent overshoot, like the feed forward would do too much, and I bet that's what I was experiencing. But yeah, so thanks, Timmy. Love your content. Thank you. What is the cheapest you could build a fast, reliable drone? I don't know. There's a lot of videos out there building budget drones. The keyword you have in there is reliable. So, I mean, I would say I'm really happy with what I have right here. Like, I'm not rocking the really expensive T motors anymore. The stack isn't too expensive, unlike KISS, which unfortunately is really expensive now. So, I mean, this wasn't built to be a budget build, but it's not that expensive. I don't know how much it is, but generally, I would not cheap out. So, sorry, I can't really answer that question. Oh, Cinefly is talking about like the Velocidrone instructional group. Well, you can spectate them and comment on stick movements since that's overlaid. Yeah, okay. So that would be interesting. Like a master class, essentially. Yeah. I think that would be definitely interesting because that's a lot different than me just talking and doing some moves, because that doesn't really I feel like that doesn't connect as well as doing something one-on-one, or like a master class like that. All right. Have you seen Max Beamer's video on motor output limiting? I've been flying 6S at 2500 kV and 6S at 76% motor output, which equals 1900 kV. I have not seen that video, but I guess I'm going to assume that's so that you can run both 4S and 6S. And yeah, there's no reason that shouldn't work as long as, like I said before, you're just going to have a higher idle speed on 6S. You can set idle min now at 4.22. Yeah, I saw that too. The worst situation is when I have loose prop or bend or break prop. And that's talking about the motors getting hot. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, if you bend a prop and then your motors get hot, just change your props. That's like the first thing you should always try if you're having any kind of issue. Change all your props to brand new props, and 90% of the time the issue is going to go away. So if your motors are only getting hot when you have damaged props, there's nothing to worry about there. Do you use black box or PID toolbox? No, I just do it by feel. The one time I had to use black box was with that low quality all-in-one ESC flight controller OSD all-in-one board, and I was trying to diagnose what the heck was going on, what was going wrong with that one gyro axis. Since then, I haven't had to use it. I don't feel the need to. I just do it by feel. Cinefly with the Velocidrone Masterclass. Yeah, Masterclass, Patreon, question mark. I don't have Patreon, unfortunately, but you guys think I should have a Patreon? What do you normally turn on in OSD? Oh, good question. I have flight time, simple one, which for whatever reason I flew today and I didn't have flight time, so I have to go fix that. I have flight time. I have battery capacity. That's my favorite. So I always land at 1,000 milliamp hours. I have my motor amperage. I have battery voltage. And then my flight mode, which, so I have basically one thing in each corner and then the flight time in the middle, or at the bottom middle. And then I have like low battery. I have all the warnings turned on pretty much. So, yep. Thanks for the knowledge, man. Helpful stuff. Thank you. All right. So I have reached the bottom of the chat. I'll give it maybe a minute or two. If you guys have more questions, we can keep going. Oh man, it's already been 50 minutes. Okay. But I can keep going if you guys have more questions. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes if you want to type more questions. But if not, we'll just end it here. How do you calibrate your current sensor? Good question. So what I usually do is, first of all, I've been flying some kind of iteration of this setup for years now. So I generally know what the amp reading should be. So I usually like guesstimate it. First time out, I can get pretty close. But after that, what I do is I just fly every battery to 1,000 milliamp hours on the OSD, and then I check it against the charger when I charge, because that will also tell me the milliamp hours. And I'm pretty sure every single charger on Earth will tell you that because I just have the cheapo 4-button charger. So every like 4-button charger or fancier charger should tell you how many milliamp hours go back into your battery. And then you just compare the two and you can adjust accordingly. Joshua Barbell has a good video on that I actually go off of. Someone says, I wish you luck. Thanks. All right. Any more questions? Each battery discharges differently too. Well, as long as you're paying attention to the milliamp hours, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I do run all of the same exact batteries, so I try to avoid that variable by doing that. What's the best way to learn and progress with flying? Is there anything other than stick time you could recommend? What's your favorite thing to practice? All right. I like these questions. Okay. Oh, I was gonna say stick time first. That's number one. Like you have to fly to get better. You have to do whatever you're doing to get better at whatever you're doing. So you can't get good at playing an instrument unless you play an instrument. So that's obvious. I think you know that. But as far as getting better, I think what you need to do is focus on something every time you go out and fly. Because if you're just going out and you're just flying to fly or flying to have fun, like that's fine. Like flying to have fun is great. But if you're focusing on like a certain trick or trying to fly smoother or avoid prop wash or whatever, like just go out there with a mindset like I want to improve this today. And I think you'll get better faster just by having, you got to have that drive to get better, and you have to just take baby steps, think of something you can work on and just do it, and combined with stick time you'll get better. So what I used to do is I'd actually just fly around my house, which helped me a lot with my precision and proximity flying, because it's not that much space. And then I would go and I would watch all my footage, and then I would look for things I didn't like, which in the beginning I was like, all right, I'm going to try to fly like Schizo today. And then I would watch the footage and I was like, that does not look like Schizo at all. But then I'd figure out all kinds of things I would try to work on. But, you got to start somewhere. So you just take those baby steps and try to get better. What's my favorite thing to practice? I would say my focus lately is kind of like flow and smoothness, and just I would say it's like musicality almost, because that's kind of the equivalent. So if you think of freestyle as like an art form, then I would say it's equivalent to like phrasing, dynamics, musicality. If you play like an instrument or if you're musical. So I feel like my mechanics with the sticks and tricks and whatever, they're pretty good. They're a really good spot right now. So I don't feel like I need to go out and just like grind split S's or grind juicy flicks or something like that. I feel like I need to go out and focus on almost the emotion of the flying or something like that. Because that, once again, trying to fly like Schizo, because in my opinion, he has the most musical or emotional flying I've seen. And that's kind of, to me, that's the next level. That's where I want to go. Because, you can bang sticks all day, just doing crazy flips and whatever. And that requires a different kind of skill of like mechanical skill, reaction time, and just raw practice. But then there's also, emotions. What has been your go-to firmware version Betaflight, and what are you running now? The go-to version of Betaflight is the most recent release because that's allegedly the best. Nowadays, they all feel the same to me, and I'm on 4 point something. I don't know what I'm on. Nobody can fly like Schizo. That is true. All right. I'll give one more minute for any more questions. And if not, we'll just end it. All right. So I think I'm going to end it here. Thank you all for joining me either live or the recording. Let me know in the comments if you want to do something like this again. This is kind of more casual, long format kind of thing. So yeah, let me know. And make sure that you guys get subscribed so you don't miss my normal videos. Please like this stream if you liked it. And thanks for watching.